Welcome to another edition of Inspired Stories, where leaders share their experiences so we can learn from their successes, how they've overcome adversity, and explore current challenges they're facing.
Welcome to another edition of the Inspired Stories podcast, where leaders share their experiences so we can learn from their successes, how they've overcome adversity, and explore current challenges they're facing. My name is Anthony Codispoti, and today's guest is Mike Whaling, founder and president of 30 Lines. They are a digital marketing agency that takes a holistic approach to online marketing and brand presence. While they've helped a whole variety of companies, including the Bob Evans Restaurant Group, their specialty is in the area of property management, where they have built a suite of tech tools. He's also on the board for the Housing and Shelter for Central Ohio for YMCA, which is something he's very passionate about, and I look forward to digging more into that. But before we get to the good stuff, today's episode is brought to you by my company, Add Back Benefits Agency, where we offer very specific and unique employee benefits that are both great for your team and fiscally optimized for your bottom line. One recent client was able to save over $900 per employee per year by implementing one of our proprietary programs. Another client is going to save over $1,200 per employee per year by implementing a patented construct that we offer. Results vary for each company, and some organizations may not be eligible. To find out if your company qualifies, contact us today at addbackbenefitsagency.com. Now, back to our guest today, the founder of 30 Lines, Mike. I appreciate you making the time to share your story today.
Hey, thanks for having me on the show.
So tell us in simple language, what does 30 Lines do, and what was the original inspiration behind it?
My dad used to say 30 Lines manipulates the internet. I don't know that I would go that far, but that's kind of the idea, right? So 30 Lines is a digital marketing studio. Our core and our foundation is around content marketing and everything that you need to build a holistic online presence. Our goal is, no matter where somebody is looking, we want them to find the message that you want them to see about your business, whether that's from you or from your customers, probably better from your customers. But we really look at, how do you create the content that people are looking for today? How do you be the best answer to their questions? And how do you build a presence that is, your online storefront in the best way possible?
So what would be a good first step that you would take with a new client in terms of trying to determine what is the content that people are looking for in their particular niche?
Talk to their sales team, talk to their support team. Really, you already know the questions that people ask the most. If you don't, the people on the front lines do. We do a lot of work with apartments, and the folks that know the answers, know what people are asking about, are the leasing agents that are handling the questions, the maintenance guys that are out on site and in people's homes, helping them, get things fixed. Those are the folks that are on the front lines and really understand what people are looking for and how how they put things in their own language. And I think that really applies to any business. If you're just getting started, I would just pay attention to what people are talking about in your industry, whether that's going to conferences or paying attention to online communities or forums or those kinds of things. Other podcasts like this, it's not too difficult to hone in on what people are focused on right now. And then, and I'm not necessarily talking about just the latest buzzwords. It's more, what are the deep things that people are really, really asking about and want to get to, so that they can really understand how to run their business better, how to make better decisions for themselves or for their family or whatever it is they're looking to do.
As a tech company, I kind of expected your first answer to be something like, oh, we use Google Trends or, different keyword tools to find that. And I'm going to guess that's part of your arsenal as well. But it was fascinating that the first thing that you came up with was kind of old school, offline, talk to the people who are out there, bumping into customers every day.
It's, it really is. Things haven't changed much. It's just kind of the places where those conversations are happening. But yeah, all of those tools are available and they make sense, but you want to get to what is it that your people are hearing, and how do you put it in your customer's language as easy as possible.
There are a lot of great marketing agencies out there. I've even had the privilege to interview some for this show. But what I think is really interesting about what your company does is the suite of software tools that you've built. Tell me more about that and how it separates you from your competitors.
Yeah. So we do a lot of business with the property management industry and multifamily real estate, multifamily housing, commercial real estate. Um, we that industry is, like many others, they have their own set of software solutions that are industry specific. They call it property management software, and there's all kinds of different flavors of that and different things that it needs to do. What we have seen is that those tools are really good at helping people run their property. They're not necessarily the best tools out there for modern digital marketing or modern marketing, period. And so as we were growing our agency, we have the agency side of the business. We've identified, hey, this is what we want to be able to do as a marketing agency, and those tools weren't available. So we went out and we basically we're essentially building the bridge between property management software and the tools that our clients use every day and the tools that we want to use, like website platforms and local listings and online advertising platforms and email marketing and those kinds of things. That's what we know works, and we needed the tools to make it work for us, and so we're building some of them.
So you're sort of like a super fancy customized version of like a Zapier, where you're getting one platform to talk to another.
Yeah, in a lot of ways, right? And we're trying to add some insights and recommendations and add our own layer of thought on top of it, right? So we don't just want to move the data. We want to help our customers understand what's happening and where do we think that their money is best invested when they're implementing their marketing plan. When we look at the numbers for us, another industry that's really similar to apartments is like the auto industry and auto dealers. People want to see the apartment that they want to live in. People want to drive the car, that they want to test drive the car that they're going to drive off the lot. And so that typically means that you're not making a sale online. Certainly people can lease an apartment online. They can buy a car through Carvana. That those are there, but most people today still want to take that test drive, or they still want to come see the apartment. And so what we see is that it's a very different environment from like an e-commerce, right? Which you don't have that instant gratification of, hey, people clicked my ad, they came to the website and they bought, and I can see the purchase. There's a whole set of nurturing that has to happen. We got a lead. Now we need to talk them through. We need to show them what we have to offer. We need to find the right solution. And then we need to get them to an application or sit down for financing or whatever that looks like. And what we see is you end up with this whole big, marketing machine. And there are certain touch points there, certain places where if you optimize those and really take care of the customers that are right in front of you, it's going to be a far more efficient system, and you're not going to need to spend as much to acquire the next lead.
Do you find that in your environment, it's more difficult to tie attribution to the final transaction than it would be for e-commerce? You're laughing. Is that like the pain of your existence?
I call attribution kind of a pipe dream, right? Like, there's a 100-year-old quote about, half my advertising works and the other half doesn't. The problem is I don't know which half. I think that we have a little more detail than that today. But the idea of attribution is really, it's kind of a fool's errand in my mind. And I know that there's plenty of tools out there, and there's a lot that we can gain from looking at how people buy and how they behave. But if I ask somebody, hey, how did you hear about 30 lines? The best answer that someone could give is, geez, everybody knows you guys. Everybody knows you. And I hear about you every time I talk to a peer. They say you got to talk to 30 lines. And, that's the best answer. But who do I attribute that to? Right. And it's the same kind of thing with apartments, with, anything where there's a pretty significant buying journey. I'm sure with you, there's a lot of touch points when you're talking with another business of all the different people you have to talk to and the different ways you have to get in front of them, and, lots of different avenues for you to create content, like a podcast like this. And it's hard to say which one of those really is the one that got someone over the hump to make the decision. So we kind of look at it as, what can the software tell us? What can, tools like Trends and Google Analytics and advertising and those kinds of things. But then we also ask, hey, how did you hear about us? And the really interesting thing is that what is in your CRM system that the software says is where the lead came from is often, more often than not, completely different from what the customer tells you if you just ask them and leave them, make it an open-ended question. And we see this all the time. I get leads coming in through our website, and our website says the lead came from Google, and the prospect says, I heard about you at a conference, or I heard you on a podcast, or I found you on ChatGPT. All of those are things, and it's like, who do I give the credit to? Kind of all of the above. But I'm much more interested in understanding how people behave and where people go to get their answers than I am to say, hey, this one specific source is the source that made that sale.
How does that come into play as you're trying to justify to your clients that, hey, you should renew your service because we're generating so much in sales for you, we've sent so many leads to you? Doesn't that come into play and them sort of having to justify internally that you're a worthwhile expense?
Absolutely. And that's one of the things that we hammer home with our team all the time, is make sure that customers see the value and can communicate the value to their team, because marketing is a lot of art and a lot of science, and a lot of people don't necessarily appreciate the art side. They want it to be all science. But what we see is, because we take that holistic view that you mentioned, and because we look at, are we helping in B2B marketing, people will call it like sales enablement. Are we helping people with their nurturing emails? Are we helping with follow-up? What are the things that we're doing to help salespeople create more appointments and close more deals? If we can see those numbers and we have a benchmark, and then we can say, hey, after we implemented our solutions, here's how much better we are than your benchmark, I can start to show that not only are we generating more leads, but we are turning more of those leads into sales. And that's really what we try to do in any business, is I want to get as close to the money as possible, because that's what talks, right? So if I can get to, how many leads do we generate? What's your cost per lead? Or how many, tours, or how many appointments, or how many calls did we generate? And then after that, for apartments, that's, if somebody toured, can I get those tours to then fill out an application to rent in the building? In the restaurant, it's a little bit different. The restaurant, we have a little more, we can send an email and we see that people click on that. We see that they redeem the coupon in the store. Our goal there is, understanding that customer, our client, their goal is get that person back in the store one more time this month, or 3 more times this year, whatever those metrics are. So a lot of what we do is really take some time to understand our customers' goals and what are the metrics that they care about, and how do we make sure that what we're putting together aligns with where they're trying to go, so that when we come back in 6 months or 12 months and sit and have that review to go, hey, how are we doing? Let's renew. It's a much easier conversation, because we have the benchmarks. We know where they started. We're all on the same page about what success looks like. And then we can have a same page conversation that makes it a lot easier.
So rather than trying to show that, hey, this Google ad campaign is what drove sales for you guys, it's more of, hey, here were the benchmarks that we had before we started working with you. Occupancy rates were here. I don't know, click-throughs were here, conversions were here, applications were here. And now look, all of those benchmarks are trending upwards. That's the conversation.
Yeah, I'll tell you, the apartment industry is a fascinating one, just so many nuances, but it's one of the only industries that I know of where, like, there's not more widgets to be made, right? It's not like, once I figure out my return on my advertising, I can just crank up that formula and just crank out more widgets and push more ads. It's, for any given apartment building, there's 100, 200, 300 people in the world that can only be a customer at any one time. So once you're full, you're done, right? Especially right now, because housing supply is, we're building more apartments right now, in this very moment, but we are behind in terms of housing supply. So um, it's a really interesting industry to do marketing for, because it's not necessarily how do I get to that formula of maximizing my ROAS or my ROI. It's really more, how do I create the most cost effective machine to lease these 200, 300 apartments? And once I find that, then we just start getting more and more efficient and look at, I love when I can go to a client and say, hey, we're on track, we're trending ahead of pace. I don't think we need to spend as much on Google ads as we originally budgeted. Here's some money back. That's one of my favorite conversations to have.
That's an unusual conversation for a marketing agency to initiate, in my experience.
It's one that sets us apart.
Did I hear you say that you've had folks find you using ChatGPT?
We have, actually. I did have somebody in our contact form. They said, I found you on GPT and I checked your website and it checked out. So we want to talk.
So I want to know what that looked like. They were typing some sort of a query into ChatGPT, and ChatGPT came back with your company as the recommendation.
Here's the thing. You go back to your question about attribution. I'm never going to be able to directly attribute that to GPT, other than the fact that somebody put it in a form and typed it in, because I don't get any tracking, and there is nothing from Google that says, most of the time ChatGPT doesn't even give you a link to the website. It's just spitting out words. So there's not a direct link from ChatGPT into your website so that your website can track it and see, right? There's actually a whole little kind of cottage. I mean, it's more than a cottage industry at this point, but it's, changing things for Google and manipulating your website or adding content or whatever you want to call it for search engines is search engine optimization. There's kind of a new budding segment of that called answer engine optimization, because that's what these chat engine, that's what GPT and Bard and Claude, all these systems are. They are, you type in a chat and it gives you the answer, or it gives you a set of words that it thinks is the answer. So it becomes really difficult to track directly, but we have that anecdotal evidence, and we're looking at what are the things that people are typing into some of these engines, what are the questions that they're asking, and how do we create content that can be the best answer that then gets crawled at some point, not only for Google, but also for ChatGPT and other systems like that.
Is there some sort of a tool that shows you what kind of queries are being generated inside of these large language models?
Not directly yet. I mean, there are certainly there are tools out there like Answer the Public that will tell you what kind of questions people are asking. There are some keyword tools where you can really get specific around questions, how to and how do I get to, or what are the best blank for me. There's lots of those kinds of things out there that you can pull those tools from Google and from other sources like that, and then you can kind of guess that people are having similar conversations in other platforms.
Did you talk with that one lead? Do you have any idea what it was they typed into ChatGPT that led to you?
I did talk with them. We didn't get specifically into what their exact query was, but yeah, it's fun to see. It's definitely fun to see that people are, people are always going to be looking for answers to their questions. It's part of the shopping journey, behavior, whatever you want to call it. It's fun to watch how that behavior changes in terms of where people go to get their answers.
As we think about the property management part of the business that you guys service, who's your ideal client? Is it somebody really small? Do you need to have a certain number of units to make sense to use your services?
My ideal client is somebody who is sophisticated enough to appreciate digital marketing and some of the things that we're able to do with it, but also not necessarily big enough that they have their own team to execute it on their own. So, sometimes that's somebody who has 1,500 units, which is a pretty, it's a good sized portfolio, but in the kind of the institutional side of the business, it's pretty small. Our bread and butter clients are probably in the 3,000 to 10, 15,000 unit portfolios, which, that's typically anywhere from 20 properties to 80 or 100. And, a lot of times they'll have multiple ownership groups. Ideally, the folks that we have are somewhat connected to the ownership, because it's honestly easier for me to talk money with the owners than it is with a third party fee manager. There's some different incentives there. But like I said, a good customer for us is someone who understands where the market's going, wants to be a little ahead of the game, at least a little ahead of the game. They want to be ahead of the game. They don't want to just use, off the shelf templates. But they know they can't do it all themselves.
And what separates you then from a competitor? Say I'm a property management company that's in that sort of sweet spot, and I'm shopping around, I'm talking to different providers, and 30 Line's one that I'm looking at. Why am I ultimately deciding to go with you guys?
I'm not really beholden to any one channel, any one platform. We've purposely built our system to be independent. And so, we can take in data from a lot of different systems. We can connect with multiple different CRMs. It doesn't bother me if you say, hey, I already have a chatbot that we need to put on our website. I don't need yours. That's fine, because I have plenty of other things that I can sell that client besides a chatbot. Like I told you before, we love those scenarios where we can cut back on things like advertising, because we know that means that our other services are doing what they're supposed to do. And most of the time, our other services are actually more profitable for us anyways. So, the fact that we have that really deep knowledge of how people shop, we've got over a decade of research at this point of how people shop and how those behaviors are changing. And that's not just from us, that's from third parties. And we're able to take that and turn it into marketing campaigns that really make sense for the customer. Our goal in my head, if somebody hires me, I'm doing business with another business, B2B, but really the way that things are going to work the best is if we do the best thing for their customer, their shopper. Because if it's easier for their shopper to do business with my client, then my client wins, and we end up being the sidekick to their hero story.
Tell me more about your commitment to affordable housing and the time you've spent with this YMCA board.
Yeah. I think it's come from working in the housing industry and understanding some of the misconceptions about the housing industry, and seeing it from both sides. I've had the opportunity to work with some of the biggest management companies in the country and what they do. And I love seeing the parts about housing of like using it as a vehicle to create wealth for your family. But at the other end of the stick there, we don't have enough housing in this country. We're behind. And in a lot of places, we're making it harder for developers and real estate operators and landlords. We're making it harder for them to do business. And some of that is, legislative, some of that's insurance, some of that is, utilities. There's just a lot of different things that are pressing on this, but what's happening is it's making it more difficult for us to develop housing when we need it most. We're, a decade behind in a lot of areas. If you look at here in Central Ohio, last I saw, we are somewhere, if you look at the numbers of housing that we need in 2050, 70% of that housing doesn't exist yet. And we're not necessarily incentivizing more development, and like I said, some of it's legislative, some of it is other expenses, some of it is, the not in my backyard, the NIMBY crowd that says, no new growth. I like things the way that they were. And that's just not realistic, right? And what ends up happening is all of that trickles down. If you look, across the history of this country, all of that, you look at redlining and some of the things of some of the racial legislation that have really held people back from having the opportunity to live in the neighborhoods they want to live in, or buy homes. There's a lot of work that has to be done. And, I've had the privilege to work on a board we are one of the largest providers of affordable housing in Columbus, in the central Ohio area. And there's a lot more to do.
So what
We
exactly
see.
gets done there? When you say that you're one of the largest providers, does that mean like you own some Section 8 housing, or what's it look like
We
in the
are. I mean, we're developing properties now. We've successfully opened a few buildings, and we're helping people out. We are helping with supportive services at some of the community shelters. We're very involved in a lot of the supportive services that go around transitional housing. What we found is that having a roof over your head makes a huge difference if you're trying to find a job or just trying to get back on your feet. But that's not the only thing. Like you can't just put somebody into a kind of a traditional apartment building with no support and no help and no services and expect them to succeed, especially in a place like Columbus where, we don't have any mass transit. You have to take the bus to get over to whatever agency you have to get to make sure that you continue to keep your benefits so that your kids can go to school and you can get fed and those kinds of things. We don't make it easy on these people. And so, we really look at what are the steps that we have to do to provide housing for people and transition them into sustainable long-term housing, but what are the services that we need to provide along the way to help them make sure that they can build a life.
That's great. Mike, most business leaders I've met have at least one story where they overcame a big challenge, something that looked like it was going to wipe them out. Maybe it was a lawsuit or a fire or a big accounting mistake, something that almost did them in. You have any stories like that to share?
I don't have anything that scary, but we've definitely I've had a few times along the way where, I wasn't quite sure if we were going to make payroll, that kind of thing, and we were looking for what are the things that we need to do to really keep this thing afloat. I think probably the biggest one that hit me was we really took on two huge initiatives at once. Kind of, but company was doing really well. This was about 2017 ish. Company was doing great. We had some money in the bank, and I pulled the trigger on two big initiatives at the same time. And for a bootstrap company, that can kill you, and it almost did. If it was one of those things where we just didn't keep our focus we didn't have focus. We went in two different directions and invested in two different places, and it really slowed us down a lot more than if we had just picked one of those and went all in on that one thing. So, but we made it through. We made it through COVID. That one was a big one for us. We shut down the office. I was flying home from spring break and got the news that the NBA had shut down their league. And, I sent a message to the team just to say, hey, we're not going to the office for the foreseeable future. And turns out we haven't been back since. We shut down the office and have been fully remote ever since. But we've, like I said, we bootstrap. I bootstrapped this. We've built the whole thing without taking on any outside money. And when you do that, you got to stay focused. You got to make sure that you keep your eye on the ball and kind of really do one thing well before you jump to the next one.
Do you feel like you've fully embraced that lesson, or is that a mistake that you've repeated? Because what you're describing is really common for business owners. You have all these ideas out there and you want to go after them all at the same time. It's tough to rein yourself in.
It really is. It really is. And, I imagine you probably feel the same way, right? Like where other people see challenges, I see opportunities. And it takes a lot of restraint and filtering to hold back and go, hey, we want to go after this. I have a long list of roadmap. What are the things we want to get to, right? And I just kind of look at it as job security, but yeah, it takes a lot of restraint, and it is one of those things where I have an operations manager on the company, and one of their main jobs is to be my filter, to take this stuff in and then make sure that we're prioritizing the right things. Hey, here's all of Mike's ideas. Here are the things that our customers are asking for. Here are the other things that the rest of our team wants to do, because they have awesome ideas too. How do we then order those and prioritize them and create a plan of attack? But I think that's the beautiful thing about being an entrepreneur and being in business for yourself, is that there's opportunities everywhere. And as technology expands, as things evolve, that's not stopping anytime soon. Lots of ways to make money right now.
Coming out of COVID, you guys, like everybody else, you shut down the office, and it's interesting to hear you guys haven't gone back. How has that transition worked out? Do you think you're full-time remote now? Like, this is how it is?
Yeah, I mean, we've gone
from
90% of our employees were within 20 miles of Columbus, Ohio, to we're now in 10 states and 2 countries. And it's a very different way to run a business. I haven't decided which one's better yet. I think that most people enjoy the freedom and the flexibility of being able to work from home. But we definitely have to force some communication where we didn't have to before. We do a team retreat at least once a year where we get everybody together, and we spend a couple of days, and most of that time is really just fun. It's just getting to know each other. When you're fully remote, you don't have that opportunity to go grab lunch with somebody or go out for a drink after work. So you have to create those opportunities for people. Being fully remote, you don't have those water cooler moments. You don't have that, like, hey, you got a minute so I can run this by you before I put it in front of the boss. So you have to be much more communicative. I think being fully remote is, the communication requirements are probably 30% greater of how you have to change checkpoints and milestones for your projects. Let's make sure that we're on the right track. If you don't have those, it's really easy. It's harder to tap somebody on the shoulder in Slack or in Teams and say, hey, can I borrow you for a minute? People want to put their head down and get deep work done, and we try and create an environment for that. But at the same time, we have to force those issues where people communicate and collaborate.
How do you do that? What's something you've tried that's actually worked?
So one thing is we've kind of built our schedule around creating those environments in both ways. We looked at doing a 4-day work week, and we decided against it. We got some feedback from our clients that just said, hey, we work 5 days a week and we expect our partners to as well. And we took that really seriously, but we also want to offer some flexibility to our team. So we said Mondays and Fridays, I want 40% of your time. I want that to be deep focused work. So we do not allow internal meetings on Mondays and Fridays. If you have to meet with a client, that's fine. If you have to take a call, understood. But no internal meetings on Mondays and Fridays. Those are your days to put your head down and get work done. And then Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday are the days where we meet with each other, we collaborate, we create some of those times to check in with each other and foster that communication that you need.
Are there any
other thing that we're doing?
Go ahead.
I was going to say, the other thing that we're doing that I wish we probably did more is we're doing a lot more with audio messages and video messages. There's a lot that you can get done if you can just record a message really quickly, or a Loom video or something like that, and just go, hey, here's what I'm seeing, or here's what I'm thinking. Take a look at it and let me know what you think. There's so much that you can get done through audio and through video that you can't do in chat.
Mm-hmm. Love Loom. Been using it for years. It's a great tool. Any other little tools like that you guys use that pretty critical to your success?
Um, I mean, you mentioned Zapier. We do use Zapier quite a bit to, one of our company values is connect the dots. We really think that there's a lot of value in understanding how things work together and the impact that it has on other systems. But we love looking for, hey, once we have a checklist, once we have a template for a project, how do we find the things that we can automate? How do we find the things that we can connect? And Zapier is a great tool for that. Another one that's a little more recent for me that I really like is a tool called Sunsama. Sunsama it connects your email and your project management system. So for me, we use Asana. And, if we have tasks in Asana, I don't necessarily see those tasks in my calendar. But what Sunsama does is it takes your email and it takes your project management and it takes some other systems and it says, here's the work you have to get done. We're going to put it all on your calendar. We're going to pull it from multiple systems and put it all on your calendar. And we're going to force you to prioritize and make time to get all of this stuff done. So it's been a really nice tool for me because whether it's in Slack or in our project management system or in email, I can organize all of those things and pull them together and go, okay, here are the things that I need to do. Where am I going to find time to do this? And it helps me do that.
And based on the name Sansana, I'm going to guess it connects specifically with Asana and probably not other project management tools.
Sunsama, Sunsama.
Okay.
So, and I think it does.
Probably not
It works with some
exclusive
other
to
systems
Asana.
too. No, it's definitely not. Definitely
Let's
not.
check that out.
Yeah.
Mike, what's something you wish you could teach the 20-year-old version of yourself? Something that's pretty clear to you now that you wish had been a little bit earlier in life.
I think probably two different things. One is it's okay to not know what you want to be when you grow up. I at 20, very few of us actually know, but I think that that's fine, and it's okay to try things and discover what you don't like, because I think that that's a really easy way to find, roll things out and get to what you do like. But the other side of that is I think that it's I would say swing bigger. Like we're all gonna. It takes the same amount of time to work on a. I've heard this from from some of our clients. It takes the same amount of time to work on a small deal as it does to work on $100 million deal. So swing bigger and go after bigger deals. Go after bigger clients. Try bigger things, especially when you're 20. Right? Like when you're 20 years old, there's hardly any risk. You could fall on your face and fail miserably and go out and get another job somewhere else, and you learned a ton. Worst case, and if everything works out, then you're way ahead of everybody else who's still in college for the next few years. So
when you're shopping for hats, it's just as important to find out which ones don't fit as it is to find out which ones do. Yep. Same kind of thing in real life. Mike, what's a challenge that you're currently working through in your business? And maybe something that you're not even successfully working through quite yet.
Oh man, I'm one of those people, like I think I always have more to do, right? Like everything feels like a challenge to be tackled. There's a number of them. One that comes to mind is I'm really looking for better ways to build a company culture. And some of the things we talked about before, remote, we do a lot to share our pets and share our favorite meals, and we're not afraid to have our kids jump on a Zoom call and those kinds of things. And we're looking for what are the ways that we can build some of that culture in a remote environment. And the big part of that is making sure that we are celebrating all the wins, big and small. And so it's a very concerted effort. And that's one of those things you have to be very intentional about, to understand what people are working on, what are they happy with, what are the things that they feel good about, and how do we make sure that we identify those, and and when appropriate, celebrate it with everybody else, so that people can see what their teammates do and what they're working on and what they're good at and what they're passionate about, and what they can go to them for if they have a question about something down the road. But that's something that we are trying to navigate, trying to figure out, and we've done okay, but I think there's a lot more that we can do there. And then, I think the other piece of it for us is really trying to identify where new technology fits in. We actually we wrote a book last year about ChatGPT and AI and how our clients can use it. And I know that there's more opportunities for us to incorporate that into how we're working, so that we can work smarter and not harder. But it's one of those things where it takes some time to work through that stuff and incorporate it and make people feel comfortable with it, and give them some understanding of how they can use the technology to make their jobs and make their lives a little bit easier. So I think those are two of the big ones that we're working on right now.
Are you guys currently hiring?
We are.
What positions are you looking to fill?
Client services, so account managers. We are looking for some folks in data analysis and reporting. We're looking for we're actually looking for an email marketing expert. We like a product specialist for email marketing. That's been a big one for us. And then probably by the end of the year, we'll be looking for a couple more engineers.
Right. Where do you see AI and ChatGPT going specifically in your industry? How can you leverage that?
A lot of different ways. So we see AI as kind of a spice rack. It's, there's not like one AI that you just go, hey, we're going to plug this in and it's going to solve all our problems. It's really, what are the things that are tedious, repetitive tasks, or what are the things that would take a human a long time to do, and how can we then apply some intelligence to that and make it better? So the places where we're using it, the places where our clients are using it, are on a lot of marketing automation, a lot of things like, hey, you want to schedule a tour to come see an apartment building, we can have some AI go back and forth with that person over email or over text message and figure out a way to schedule a time for them to come in. Another big one for us is data analysis. We do a lot of competitor analysis, and we'll pull data from Google reviews, and then we'll go out and we'll look at their top 10 competitors, and we'll compare. Here's all of your reviews. Here are your competitor reviews. Here are the things, based on the negative reviews. Here are the things that you need to go improve. Here's where you need to train your team based on your competitors' reviews. Here are the opportunities. Here are the gaps. Here are the things that we're going to shift around in your marketing so that you can attack their weaknesses. So, those are two fairly simple examples of where we're applying it, and there's a lot more.
If I recall correctly, you've actually presented on this very topic at some large industry conferences. Is that right?
I have, yes.
Yeah. And what specifically have you shared there?
It's very similar to what I just mentioned. It's kind of really understanding. It's with our clients, we work with smaller marketing shops, and in a lot of cases, bandwidth is an issue and resources are an issue. But when you can take that and say, rather than have one campaign, if I can say, all right, who are my top 5 audiences? Okay, now create marketing campaigns for each one of those audiences and create Google headlines, create email subjects, create social media calendars. Now I can start to create all of that content, and things that used to take us, hours, if not days to put together, we can have done in 30 minutes to an hour, and have that ready to go.
Mike, I just one more question for you, but before I ask it, I want to point people to your website so they know how to get in touch with you, whether it's a client that may want to work with you or an employee looking for a new career opportunity. So best place for them to go is 30lines.com, 30lines.com. Is that the best place?
Yeah, 30lines.com. If you want to reach out to me directly, I'm most active on LinkedIn.
Right. Okay, last question, Mike. Aside from AI and ChatGPT, where do you see the property management industry evolving in the next 5 to 10 years?
Man, that's such a great question. Um, I think there's going to be more emphasis on brand, because once you start to identify opportunities to centralize, to plug in some technology, to um, here's one thing that I'll say: if you look at the market conditions right now, with interest rates where they are, and where with investors where they are, there's a lot of, call it, dry powder out there of people ready to buy and people who are excited to build, given the right opportunities. So I think we're going to see some growth. We've had record apartment growth over the past couple of years. It's going to taper down a little bit, but I think that's going to come back then in 2027 ish. But as we do that, you're going to see more opportunities for apartments to look more like hotels. You're going to see brands pop up. You're going to see some loyalty programs pop up. And you're going to see more, not necessarily like resort style living, but I think you're going to see more. Hey, if you know our brand here, we also have 5 other locations around town that you might want to check out if you need to move across town, or if you need to move to Chicago or whatever. I think we're going to start to see some more of that, and that's something that the apartment industry has never seen. Hotels and airlines and travel are much more consolidated, whereas the apartment industry and housing is far more fragmented. But I think that we're going to see a shift in that over the next 5 to 10 years.
Great. Thank you, Mike. That's a wrap on
Thank you.
another episode of the Inspired Stories podcast. Thanks for learning with me today.